Hello and welcome back to The Majority, broadcast live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. I'm your host, Mark Devlin, and this is Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show. We're going out live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Very glad to have you with us tonight. I'm here with my co-hosts, Mary Devlin and David Griffiths.
Hello.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
So tonight we're going to have a little bit of a change to the standard format because so much has been going on. We were off last week. So we're just going to pretty much go straight into talking about all the events of the past 2 weeks. So what kind of things will we be talking about tonight, David?
Tonight, we'll be asking, what was it that finally brought down Nicola Sturgeon?
And we'll be taking a look at the motley crew of candidates vying to be the next SNP leader.
Yes, and of course we'll be asking what exactly was Sturgeon's legacy.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
And as usual, I'll be handling all the comments. They're coming in already. I'm putting them up on screen. So please, if you can try to keep them short, I'll get as many up on screen as I can.
Great stuff. So we will be back in just a moment. Right, so welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist show. And we are not saying it was the billboards that did it, but it was the billboards that did it.
Everyone knows that. Everyone knows. Yep.
So we'll take you back to last Monday, what seems so long ago now, when we put our Resign Sturgeon billboards up. Not actually ours, but yours, because you were the people who paid for them. Look at that. That is the message that you are sending to Nicola Sturgeon. Your time is up, Nicola. Resign Sturgeon. Thank you to everyone who donated to the crowdfund. If you would like to donate to extend the reach of the campaign on social media, please go to our website, Resign Sturgeon. Well, there you go. We can say that was fairly successful. We don't need to donate to that particular campaign anymore. Of course, any donation to the Majority for our efforts through 2023 would be most appreciated. But anyway, not 2 days after the billboards went up, we received the joyous news, celebrations across the land, that Nicola Sturgeon had resigned. Woo!
Yay!
And we'd like to think, of course, that the billboards were the tipping point, but even if they weren't, it shows that we have a voice. It was quite interesting, actually. I'll just put this wee anecdote in, that a friend of mine on Facebook who doesn't know what I'm involved in said he was driving down the Clydeside Expressway and saw this Resign Sturgeon billboard and was like, WTF, what's this? And I had to send him a wee note saying, small world. Anyway, a huge thank you to everyone who donated. It was a fantastic campaign, perfect timing, I suppose. And we even got a write-up in the paper about it somewhere. Oh yes, here we are. Pro-union group claims victory after Nicola Sturgeon's departure. It was the billboards. What won it? David, any thoughts on this?
Absolutely. I think the billboards were a genuine help. I think they were so unavoidable. And I think they came at the end of a very, very strong 2 week period in which the momentum was growing, it was snowballing, and I think it helped at least to tip her over the edge, because we know she was struggling by that time, and we know she can't take criticism. She certainly can't take ridicule, and there was plenty of that. So I think the billboards and the contributors genuinely helped make it happen. Well done, everyone.
Yes.
And as Anthony here says, it was people power, and I'd like to think it was. So thank you everyone who donated. It was a great billboard campaign. Of course, it was the second time we'd done it, and we knew that she was close to the edge. So we thought one last little push and she'll be gone.
Yeah.
Yes. It would have been great if she came on to her press conference and said, well, I was in my chauffeured car and I looked up and I saw the billboard and I knew that was time to go. Yep. But as Mary said there, David said, there was a litany of things that brought us to this point. 6 months and more of terrible headlines. And much more. So let's go into that then. Let's go straight up with that, David. what made her resign, apart from the
Right.
billboards?
Right. Well, in terms of what I thought about it, I thought she was going to go, as I said. I tweeted this, and it was probably about the first person to tweet that it was going to happen.
Yep.
And I think it was because I'd noticed changes in her, because there were changes in her demeanour. She looked exhausted. You know, I'm often made the rather unkind comment that she looked like Danny Trejo because she had the massive bags under her eyes. And she wasn't her customary assured self in exchanges at Holyrood, definitely not. She was tetchy, she was irritable in interviews as well. And in short, she was just far less impressive than she used to be. Now, what then came after my prediction and before the announcement, or rather just before my prediction, I should say, beg your pardon, in her now infamous interview on the 27th of Jan, she labelled the critics of the Gender Recognition Reform Bill deeply misogynistic, homophobic and racist. And I thought then, right, okay, this woman has mentally checked out. There is no way you can do the job of First Minister while you're terming all of your critics racist. You're in a terrible, terrible place when you got to that stage. So that was part of it. The other part was when she gave the now equally infamous interview with Peter Smith on STV, being asked about Isla Bryson and asked about women or women or trans women. And when she was asked, she was just left splittering and completely unable to answer questions about her own bill. And she was reduced to giggle, actually laughing out loud when asked about the difference between a trans woman and a man, and a woman rather. And she said, there is circumstances in which a trans women will be housed in the male prison estate. She had completely lost her ability to communicate completely. And I think that's what did it. I think it's when she saw that interview played back, she must have just thought, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. So I knew then she's stepping down without question. The clues were just unavoidable. So I asked the question of my source, as I've told you before, and I was told, yep, she knows it's over. I think it's going to happen. So that's why I tweeted my prediction. My Twitter absolutely exploded. And over the next few days, the change was that people started openly discussing, right, when's she going? She's going to step down. What's she going to do next? Who's going to replace her? And then people started referring to her as the outgoing First Minister. And that's when it was, and then of course on the 15th of February, which is only a week ago today, guys, it was announced. And everyone said, oh, what a surprise. Wasn't a surprise to those of us in the know, guys. Not at all.
Well, certainly she was going to go at some point. The timing was always the question. We thought, actually, I remember making predictions last year she'd be gone last March. Well, it took a year longer than that, and much more divisiveness and craziness in the meantime. Mary, what did you think about that?
Interesting comment here before I put my tuppence worth in. John Cumming is saying he thinks the real start to her demise was when she was booed in Dunfermline when King Charles III came to visit. So maybe he's got an insight there. So basically, I was just going to say that I thought she had to go. I mean, I said in our New Year predictions, I didn't think she had much time left.
Yep.
And the reason as the weeks went on after that, I definitely thought that she was going to be going soon. I think she had to find a way out of the March conference. She'd nowhere credible to go. She couldn't stand up at the conference and risk losing her entire reputation on trying to get everyone behind a de facto referendum. And then, of course, the Isla Bryson case was the first time that I can recall where her credibility really came under question, when she really looked like she had no credibility whatsoever. Yeah. And even her legion of spin doctors couldn't talk her way out of it.
Well, I think is also the friendly media in the UK started to go against her as well. They were like, who is this? Who is this nutter here who can't even answer if a man is a man or a woman is a woman, and says, in fact, they're a rapist? You know, when you lose Piers Morgan, you know, this is, and who had been her useful idiot before. And after her demise, there was so much commentary from people, including Andrew Neil, and some of the other major commentators said, you know, she played the UK media like a fiddle, right? Basically, they would come up here and say, well, what do you think about Boris? Oh, he's a terrible guy, of course. What do you think about Brexit? Oh, it's terrible, of course. Exactly what they wanted to hear. And every time we complained, of course, we complain about that all the time, because all they were doing was building up her or bigging her up all the time. But if they'd asked her at any point during that time if she was about her actual policies, how can you get a referendum? What is this gender bill? what is this hate crime bill nonsense? She was just folded like a pack of cards anyway.
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
because she never really got that kind of treatment before. And once the media knew that she had that crack in there, right? So then they focused on it, and she shattered, just like we always said. There would be a tipping point, and she would just fold very quickly.
Quite.
Yeah.
It's clear, as Mary said, they had run out of road. The de facto referendum was a scheme, a scam. We'll mention this later on. It was something that's not going to happen. Actually, Alan Smith today here is saying, I wish I would never have heard of de facto. I wish I would never hear of a de facto referendum again. Of course, Sturgeon was putting his job on the line with that. But let's just step it back a little bit. Actually, I think what happened, the main factor was when Nicola Sturgeon killed the independence movement by going to the Supreme Court with her referendum bill. And as soon as that was failed, as soon as the Supreme Court said, no, the Scottish Parliament does not have the power to have a referendum. And not only that, you're not a colony, so you can't take it to the international community.
Yep.
That was it. The only thing they were left was to do a daft scheme that Wings Over Scotland came up with, which is this de facto referendum idea. And it's never going to, everyone knows it's not going to work. It's not even like throwing a dartboard that doesn't even in the dark, that type of level. And it's just never going to hit the target, because even if they'd won, they would go down to London, say, yeah, we're ready to negotiate, and London just say, right, whatever. We're not interested, right? So that was the first way she killed it. And the second way she killed the movement, as it were, was by bringing the Greens into Parliament. The reason she did that, of course, was to push the doomed referendum bill. But that led to the SNP being led by the nose by the Greens. So we had literally crazy policies that not even the SNP faithful liked. So we had gender reform, only 44% of our own party liked that. And deposit return scheme, Mary will talk about that later. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Age A9 duelling stopped. Oil and gas industry, said put in the back burner, so to speak, and then various other disasters with the selling of renewable licenses and so on, right? These are all things that came from the Greens. Every one of these things that's in the headlines right now came from the Greens. So these priorities that she brought in, she brought the green priorities into the government, and she destroyed the SNP's credibility completely because of that. So, I mean, one thing I have to say is that these priorities, they're not ordinary people throughout the UK. Their priorities are cost of living crisis, health, education, transport, and so on. None of them were the SNP's priorities.
No, they were focused more and more fixated on net zero, and net zero just isn't going to happen. We all know it's not going to happen, but these green imposters are pushing as if it's that or the planet stops. I mean, can we just get real for 2 seconds here, guys? Can we just stop this, honestly? But you're quite right.
Said that thing the other day. I mean, the thing the other day was Lorna Slater got up in the Scottish Parliament and said, "Yeah, here I've granted £25 million to new recycling schemes in Glasgow." Wait a minute. Isn't the Glasgow Council having to get rid of 800 teachers or so many hundreds of teachers? But she's got money for this plan. Like, well, wait a minute. It's that kind of disconnect. You got a green nutters up there who are just green. I mean, fair enough to have some money to the green stuff, right? We all want to, do our bit as much as it is, but not when it takes away from education, health, and all the other priorities. And certainly for independent supporters, not when it takes away from their number one priority.
Indeed.
Well, I don't know if it's true, but there's a lot of rumours about financial irregularities going on as well. That was another factor in why Sturgeon resigned. And most of our comments here seem to be about the money. Kenneth is saying Sturgeon must not be allowed to get away with all the missing money. And then someone's laughing. Jack is laughing at her. I'm not going to comment on an ongoing police investigation.
Well, David, do you have anything to say on the money?
The missing monies, I think they're in desperate trouble. I mean, I'm talking here about Sturgeon and Morrell. I don't think that Sturgeon would have stood down in such a rush did she not see something really, really serious coming down the track. It is an ongoing police investigation. My understanding is she has been interviewed. Certainly Morrell has been interviewed. There is £600,000, which was supposedly ring-fenced for a devolution referendum, and then in the next year there was only £53,000 in their account. And when they were asked, well, do you have a second account where this other money is? No, the money's been woven through. Total rubbish. It was quite simply money which was raised for one purpose, which was used for another purpose, and that is known as fraud. And that's the basis of the investigation. I think there is unquestionably going to be some criminal proceedings over this. I really can't say how they can avoid it, because money's either there and ring-fenced or else it's not, and it's not. So where is it? That's my feeling.
It's a bit of a strange one.
We're also talking about Audit Scotland, and
yes,
there's a lot of money missing there. All the COVID money that people want to know, where is that gone as well?
Yeah, and I think there's some dissent in the ranks of people saying, well, if one leaves, why is the other one still there? Is the other one pulling the strings for the next, for the successor, and so on? Yeah. It's like, well, surely you should get rid of both. And someone was on paper, was saying, and they're saying, oh, but Peter Morrell's a winner, a vote winner, an election winner. You're like, well, okay, so was Nicola Sturgeon, but get rid of her. You know what I mean? Really?
Well,
I heard that Morrell had won all these elections. Really?
Yeah. No, who was that? Was saying it? It was on last night.
Karen McNeil is saying, I heard the police visited Butte House, and then a couple of days later she resigned.
There you go.
Right. Well, I don't think they've been interviewed by the police yet, but perhaps that will come anyway. Okay, on to one thing that we won't miss is Nicola Sturgeon's interminable waffling. And so the resignation speech there, David.
I loved it, obviously, you can tell. I was watching TV that morning, and the shock among the London commentators that this was happening was palpable. I also heard, what's her name? Gail, who does the phone in on Radio Scotland and one, Kay Adams, is it Kay Adams? There's an audio of her saying, Nicola Sturgeon's resigning. I can't believe it. I was just shocked. I wasn't shocked. Anyway, as we said, so on she came for her resignation speech. The truly remarkable resignation speech, as Robert Peston called it. Well, let's face it, Robert Peston, if he says one thing, you know the opposite's true. The man's a complete imbecile.
Yes,
so, and let's not forget, in this resignation speech, Ms. Sturgeon said the word Scotland 11 times. Additionally, she said I, me, or my 153 times. So that pretty much tells you where her thoughts were all the way through her resignation speech. So what an absolute fiasco that was. Dreadful.
And it went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. We were woken up by our friend, said, Nicola Sturgeon's resigned. We were like, yeah, right, sure, it's a joke. And then we sat there, waiting for the announcement, and through it, and our friend's not particularly political. He's just like, get on with it. It's just,
when is she going to
she
stop?
can never use one word when 15 will do it. It just goes on and on and on and on. It's so tedious. And then at the end, she's like saying, that complaining about how about polarization in politics. You're like, wait a minute. You've caused this.
That was a raison d'etre, wasn't it? To cause polarization in politics.
Okay. Well,
the longest suicide note in
Yes,
history.
one of those. Definitely, I was going to maybe mention that. Now, as you can see, I have the Resign Sturgeon T-shirt. This is a collector's item, but we hope to do an updated one with the mission accomplished, just like this, which we showed a second ago. There's the lovely model in front of that. Actually, I had quite good story. Emma. Somebody yesterday, was on Sunday, said to me, "Where are the billboards?" And I said, well, you better hurry up. They're going to be down by tonight. And he said, Oh, it's a wee while later, I got a thing from him saying, "Oh, it's no problem. We went there and we had a wee dance in front of it."
Catherine had her message on earlier.
Oh,
I
did
put
she?
it up.
Yes.
She said they did a little dance in front of the billboards.
Yeah, so did that, and the people
were
were
getting thumbs
up and tooting their car horns.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. Part of these things, of course, is to bolster our own side, and we hope that has done that. We will be back in a second, and we're going to be talking about Sturgeon's legacy. Right, which is this legacy. Mary, you're going to start with this one, aren't you?
Yeah. So, okay. Well, so let's to keep some balance. Let's start with what the SNP supporters are likely to say are the positives. Well, what they always tell us is that Nicola liked to give out a lot of things for free. Sometimes people even got the free stuff that they were promised. People like their free prescriptions, their free bus passes, their free baby boxes.
Yep.
But sometimes they didn't get their free stuff, like their free laptops and their free bikes. I guess what people don't really realize a lot of the time is that these things aren't actually free, as we're always saying. It's the taxpayers that are paying for these free things. And seeing as we seem to have a reduced number of taxpayers and an awful lot of people getting the benefits and getting all the free stuff, it couldn't really go on forever.
Quite.
And all the people who support independence don't seem to really realise either that when you stop getting your £16 billion a year from Westminster, then all of this free stuff plus more is going to go. You're not going to get your free prescriptions or your free bus passes and your free laptops and your free bikes and what have you. So, I mean, that's what we usually think of on the positive side. But most people in the SNP supporters have probably, and we've seen this a lot recently, are saying that Nicola's biggest achievement was her handling of the pandemic, and how great she was because she managed to put on her heels and get on TV every day. But basically, as some other people have been pointing out, basically from start to finish, her handling of the pandemic was really a disaster.
Sure.
It all started before the pandemic really started with the Nike cover-up.
Oh, yes, that was a good one.
And that's what started the pandemic really in Scotland. And then there was thousands of care home deaths.
Yeah.
So I don't really see how you can say, even with just those couple of things, I don't see how you can say that her handling of the pandemic was so great. And that was pointed out today by Stephen Kerr. He said, "I recall a shambles, 5 tiers that no one understood, beyond zero, arguing with the Manchester mayor over travel, spending unnecessarily on a separate app." Do you remember we had to have everything in Scotland had to be different from the way it was done in England?
Yeah.
But best of all, guys, of course, was the cutting off the bottom of doors.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That was genius, wasn't it?
Yes, that was quite something, really. I mean, but again, it was the same thing. She had had the ability to get on the TV and bum herself up, as it were, and to say she's the one doing better. And of course, easier in a crisis. Of course, nationalism thrives on chaos because they can always deflect to someone else. We're doing better, or whatever. And most people don't check these things. Supporters will say, yeah, of course you're doing better. And the people who are saying she isn't doing better, you have to find a mountain of find evidence. There is a mountain of evidence. And we'll see more of that as the COVID inquiries come up. That is another point, by the way, of, these inquiries are going to come up and could be very difficult for her to deal with. Anyway, so talking about a legacy, the other day I was on GB News. Well, we were down in London and we heard this news that Nicola Sturgeon had resigned, and GB News called me up and said, "Well, come on the show." I'm like, "Well, I'm not here, I'm not in my wee studio." And he said, "Well, come on in." And so I had an unusual opportunity to go in and meet Dan Wooten and some other people who were there. It was quite entertaining and fun. And I did this clip here with James Melville and Austin, somebody, SNP guy. I hope I'm started at the right point. Here we go.
Independence movement, pretty much stone dead. Then she tried to go She's been a success or a failure?
No, she's been an epic failure. She has failed politically. Her political agenda is in the bin, and and she's failed personally as well. Let's go talk about the political failure. She tried to go to the Supreme Court. It was a disaster. Shot down in flames, killed independence movement, pretty much stone dead. Then she tried to go for this de facto referendum scam. It's a complete nonsense, and everyone knows it's a nonsense as well. You cannot use a general election as a referendum. And then she went on with this gender nonsense, and she'd been brought down, you know, if you could excuse me for being blunt, but she was brought down by Isla Bryson's penis. That's what's happened. So that's the political agenda. She's come to the end of the road on that. And there's a personal issue. Then she's been doing this since she was 16. Right, and she was supposed to be the person that took Scotland into the sunlit uplands of independence. And where is she now? She's resigning, and just as a failure. Failed. Completely failed.
No,
Yeah, so that was the first part of that. Somewhat strident, perhaps, but you know that's what you got to expect when you're on the national TV.
Well, it was called Clash.
There was a clash. That's right.
Yeah, so you
And
did what they asked.
yeah, that's right. And there was this guy, James Melville, on there. I don't know if you know him. He's supposed to be the reasonable nationalist on there. You know, reasonable. He's like, oh, yes, I think Nicola Sturgeon, I don't really like Nicola Sturgeon's policies, but I still want independence. It's like, you know, isn't 14 years of failure enough for you? That's the kind of thing. And rather than find the clip again there, because I'm going to end up getting in the wrong place, I'll just... talk about that just for a second, because there's people like him and so many of these with the middle class nationalists perhaps, and they remind me of the people who say, well, real communism hasn't been tried yet. And instead they're saying real nationalism hasn't been tried yet. This Melville guy tried to say, you know, SNP and the independence movement, they're not the same thing. And you're like, or the Nicola Sturgeon and the independence movement and the SNP are not the same thing. You're like, you're trying to square a circle there, and it's just not really it's not working, because we know the whole thing is one thing. When Nicola Sturgeon goes, it's a huge hit to the independence movement, which is barely moving anyway. And, you know, the party is the movement, because Alba has like 2% in the polls. That's not a movement. That's, you know, that's not even going forward. So it's what do they expect? Do they really expect that someone better is going to come along and do it better than Alex Salmon and Nicola Sturgeon? Is that really what they expect? It just seems insane, really, that idea.
Have people got to thinking that far ahead? I don't know. I think they're probably all still in shock that Nicola has gone.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think people are. And I've seen, talking about her legacy, I've seen a lot of commentators, mainly from outside Scotland, saying things like, oh, she was the most capable UK politician since at least David Cameron. Or, right, okay. And she'd been great. Someone on my Facebook, a guy said, she's been great for the people of Scotland. Great for the people of Scotland.
I know.
I just said, look, stick to whining about Tories and your favourite football club. Just stay out of Scotland. The guy was from Kingston in Surrey. Said, who are you to tell anybody in Scotland what's been great for them? But as I also put, when somebody said, oh, she's been so capable, she delivered nothing of any value. Nothing whatever.
Nothing of value.
Ultimately, what will she be remembered for? Allowing violent male rapists to masquerade as women and get into women's prisons. That's going to be her real legacy, guys. Because when you think of Sturgeon in years to come, you won't think of her standing up and saying 2,100 deaths today. Nobody's going to remember that. What they will remember is a guy with a visible penis standing in a pair of leggings pretending to be a woman. So that's
the thing. As I said in the show, she was brought down by Isla Bryson's penis, and I mean that is the legacy. Because people remember that kind of thing. They remember exactly that picture. They in their mind they mentally zoom into it. It's, you know, we can see it. And she's trying to. It's like the Emperor's New Clothes kind of. You know, it is actually like that.
Well, we've always said that, and that's what's happened now.
Well, but it was the clothes were supposed to come off of her. You know, as the Emperor, it was actually Isla Bryson's penis sticking out. That she was trying to deny. She's going to say, no, there's no penis there. There's nothing. That's like, don't look there. Anyway, whatever. I think that's one part of her legacy. I think the other part, of course, is that she caused division unnecessarily for
True.
8 years, basically. After 2014, she could have said, look, we lost. We need to regroup. We need to rethink. We need to, try some good governance, perhaps, or whatever it is, an actual long-term strategy, so that when an actual generation passes, and maybe even earlier if we do things right, then the people of Scotland will be behind us and will say that, okay, this is a good idea. Of course, they can't actually do that because they don't want devolution to work. But that's an aside. But instead of doing that, what she did was immediately started to divide and to say that anyone who didn't agree with what she thought was wrong was a bad person, and so on. And all this came to a head, as it were, on this gender thing and the de facto referendum. She's saying, this is by the priority. I'm right. And the people of Scotland are like, no, you're not right. That's not what we want. And I think there'll be quite a big reckoning over the years to say what is this legacy actually is.
Well said. Just one quick comment here. Somebody, Alex Hogg, is saying, "How can he get in touch with us, guys?" He sent an email. I'm not sure who.
Yes, I did get your. I did get your email, Alex, and I'll be sending something back to you in a few days. Very busy next couple of days, but thank you for sending that. And of course, people do send us stuff all the time, and we do our best to get back in a reasonable time frame. Let's put it that way. So thank you for that, and thank you for your comments tonight. You know that many of you are watching tonight from YouTube and Facebook pages by United Against Separation and UK Union Voice. Big shout out to them for allowing us to host the show on their pages. Coming up, who will succeed Sturgeon? It's a bit of a best of a bad bunch, or just a bad bunch in general? Right. Okay. Oh, okay. Here I've got some notes here. The strength and the weakness of Scottish nationalism is it allows Kate Forbes and Patrick Harvie to be on the same side. People would never really be. Do you think Kate Forbes and Patrick Harvie would be in the same party under any other circumstances?
Not a chance.
No, not a chance. But now Sturgeon was able to keep them together. Actually, Alex Salmond was able to build that coalition to begin with, and then Nicola Sturgeon was able to some extent to make it bigger. But the problem is when you get a bigger coalition, we mentioned it earlier on, with the Greens, she brought in people who weren't actually, and in fact, she brought them in to Parliament over her own MSPs, right? So these people, the coalition inevitably has to fracture once the leader goes. So a bit like Yugoslavia after Tito died and then civil war. So as I mentioned earlier, if Nicola Sturgeon couldn't get independence, why would any SNP supporter think that any other party leader could? Their best chance, not that ever was that great, has gone, and now it's time to move on. David, have thoughts on the general state of the candidates?
Yeah, the general state. Okay, well, I'll just talk you through. Give you very briefly my view of each one. Kate Forbes. Okay, we've got Kate Forbes, who came in with a stage managed press conference to coincide with Humza Yousaf's launch. So it sounded like she had a really clever strategy here. And she then completely blew it by getting embroiled in discussions unbelievably about same-sex marriage, premarital sex, believe it or not, abortion. And I was watching this thinking, what in the name of God are you doing? Why are you getting involved in this stuff? And so a lot of people say, oh, she's being honest. I said, hang on, Kate Forbes is being honest. Kate Forbes, the SNP government's finance minister, is being honest. Are you having a laugh? This is a woman who's been telling us for years that Scotland puts more into the union than it takes out. And she's been honest now. Don't give me that nonsense. So, and in any case, you don't elect politicians to be honest. That might sound ridiculous, but politicians will always, by definition, be asked difficult questions. And they can't say, yeah, you're right, of course, yeah. Have you ever seen the film Bulworth, starring Warren Beatty, where he decides he goes to a speech. He gives a speech. He's a senator, and the woman says, "Why didn't you put any money to our community, and he said, because you don't you don't contribute much to my campaign funds. You know, have you any idea how much insurance companies pay? Far more than you do. So obviously, we're never going to do anything for you. And everyone's like, oh my God. So, and that's what honesty would get you in politics. Nowhere. So,
well, I mean, if you talk about honesty, say we could ask Humza Yousaf, "Are you an idiot?" And is he going to say yes? Right.
that's
if he's honest, he's
Exactly.
honest. That would be honest, right?
Quite.
Or while Forbes, you know, she's honest about her religious beliefs. So if you say to her, "There's no chance of a second referendum, is there?" She's not going to say, "Of course, yeah, you're right. Well, just give up then." Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
It's not about honesty. It's about you have to give effective answers that work for the situation you're in. Right. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you have to outright lie. Sometimes you might have to outright lie and hope you get away with it, right? Yes. Depending on circumstances. And generally, you're drawing a line. And I believe that you want a politicians who can do that, who can draw the line and sometimes, not necessarily sometimes go over, but know where the line is and be able to do that. That's politics.
Quite. Right? Indeed.
It's not about just telling the truth all the time. How naive is that?
You seriously couldn't have politicians if they were telling the truth all the time. I might sound cynical, but it's also true, guys. It's absolutely true. Well, and in any event, it's not as if Kate Forbes is George Washington's descendant. I cannot tell a lie. Have you ever seen her being asked about the ferries? She just, first off, she was so who signed it off, and she said, "It's all in the public domain. We've released extensive documentation." Then the guy said, "But I'm not hearing a name. What's the name?" She said, "Well, it was before my time in office." So she can lie, all right, believe me. Which makes me wonder, why did she bother raising all this stuff? And my honest opinion is she's going for the portion of the electorate who have been so turned off by the trans stuff that she thought she could come in and on a kind of back to Christian basics campaign, and everyone would say, "Isn't she wonderful? Let's vote for her." That's not going to get you elected to a left-wing progressive party leadership. Not a chance. So I think Kate has blown it. I really do, and I'd be very, very surprised if she stays in the party certainly beyond the end of this parliament. That's my advice. That's my opinion.
As Catherine says, Kate is selectively honest.
Yeah, here. Ain't that the truth?
Decides when she'll be honest.
Or deceptively honest.
I think the thing that puts me off her the most is that she's the person who knows the finances of Scotland. And
that's right.
The person who knows better than anybody what a financial disaster it would be if they actually independence. Yes. So
very well said.
Completely dishonest with the Scottish people.
Exactly.
I think so. So okay, that's I think she made a misstep on this. I don't know the honesty candidate. I mean, she could rebrand herself perhaps at that. But
I don't think she stands a chance now, guys.
Right,
I think she's out.
Right, okay. Moving on. Let's talk about. We'll talk about Ash Regan next.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on her?
Well, she bought a lot of kudos for herself by resigning over the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. Absolutely. She then came out with a really bizarrely timed endorsement of not only the de facto referendum scheme for the next UK election, but for every subsequent UK election, just in case they don't get their 50% plus one. So I don't know if she'd realised the timing of this, but everybody else in the SNP has moved on from this, and it's not going to happen now. The conference.
Oh, no, that's not. I mean, perhaps yes, from the SNP, yes, like Alan Smith thing we said earlier there. But it seems like she's the Wings over Scotland candidate, right?
Yeah.
So she's the one that is going to produce this, de facto. Let's have de facto referendums all the time, every day. Let's just go for it every day, and exactly. and I think it just shows how much of a corner that Wings boxed the SNP into by this idea, and it's just daft. I mean, really.
It was never going to work. It was never. I mean, in fairness, we said this from the start. It cannot possibly work. And in any event, I would imagine it was pointed out to them, the SNP hierarchy. That is, do you realise if we go for this and we call it and say, right, all we got to do is get 50% plus one, and then we fail to get that, then we've just lost a referendum which we called on our own terms. And
yes, exactly.
Where are we going to leave independence? You did. So that's why, and of course, not to mention the SNP MPs at Westminster saying, hang on, you're going to sacrifice seats for votes? Are you insane? So that was never going to happen. So now that says a lot about Ash Regan's judgment, I would say. But now, where is she? Well, she stayed out the way and let the other two, frankly, get on with it. But I don't think. I think she's going to be. I never really thought she was going to win it. I don't think she's got sufficient, I don't know, clout. So she doesn't strike me as a plausible, credible candidate really for leadership.
Yeah, well, they shared this thing out. Basically, one day she said the role of the First Minister is to serve all the people of Scotland. And 10 hours later, it was like, 9 years ago, I painted and proudly displayed my yes sign. It's time I got it back at independence, nothing left. That is not all the people of Scotland.
No, it's not.
It's just, no, that's not what it's about. No. And I mean, of course, when you're doing a leadership campaign, you're supposed to be focusing on the people in your party. And this is actually, maybe this is an interesting point. Who are the SNP? Yep. Right, there's a bunch of people from the Greens, right? Let's say that green leaning, or let that the youth contingent who are interested in gender issues and so on. There's the traditional, not traditional, the originals, hardcore independence, whatever it takes. Those
That's
people,
right.
And they're a declining band. And then there's the managers, the people who think that Scotland can be run competently. Right, not the managers, the people who like management, right? Yep. And think, oh yeah, SNP is going to do better for us, manage our affairs better than Westminster. And it seems that all those three are going to split up according to these candidates, right? Mary, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. The comments here are saying that they don't think there's much talent in the SNP pool.
Well, it's a puddle.
I mean, there's no competence. So, yes, I think they were held together before, I think really by Alex Salmond, to be honest. And then, of course,
I agree with that.
Nicola Sturgeon. But I think all those different sectors are going to split out now and they're going to crumble. The next elections and so on, I think, are really going to show that up.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in time, but I think the fact that one component of today's SNP is the hard left Labour, ex-Labour guys who stopped voting Labour after the Second Iraq War. Now, Labour supporters, no matter how disenfranchised they are or disenchanted with the party, if they think the Labour Party is going to win the election, they'll vote Labour all right. They really will.
Yeah, definitely.
Back there. Paul Halford just asked, is Cranky going to sit in the back benches? She actually has already confirmed she will be sitting in the back benches.
I don't believe that will last.
I don't believe it will last, but she has said she will.
Well, let's talk about competence in government with a third candidate, Humza Yousaf.
Yeah, competent and Humza, obviously just...
That's a bit of an oxymoron there, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah, quite.
Right, well, as we all know, Humza has failed upwards at every opportunity. He started off as Transport Minister, where he was arrested for driving without insurance, driving his mate's car without insurance. Somewhat of an oversight, something you might want to think about if you're Transport Minister. Then he went somewhere. Did he go to Health next? Oh, anyway.
No, it was Justice next.
Oh, I went to Justice, where he oversaw the hideous hate crime bill that's still so complicated that it can't be implemented. And
but
also,
don't forget, its predecessor, the most ludicrous legislation ever tabled, never mind passed at Holyrood, the Offensive Behaviour at Football Act.
Mm-hmm.
What? So, yeah, and that, of course, became morphed into the hate crimes bill, where you could be potentially arrested for saying stuff in your own house. That's what Humza's done so far.
That's right. So, yes, you could be arrested at any point, actually. That's the thing, for saying bad stuff against Humza. That's better watch out. Anyway, well, there seems that plan. I wonder if the UK government it's already passed, hasn't it? And the UK government has passed its time where it could block it. Of course, we all remember the white thing. I'm not going to go into that particularly. I think it was just very poorly judged, and it's not something that I think most Scots don't really see themselves as being racist or Scotland being a racist country. While, of course, there are always things that we can improve on in intercommunity relations and so on. And that's not just for race, religion, but everything that goes on as well. So, David, any actual further thoughts on
Humza? I get the feeling that Humza is going to be the guy who's going to get the job. I really do.
I think so. He's going to get it, isn't he?
I think so too. I heard somebody today. What I've found bizarre so far is the number of anti-nationalists who've said, "Why are you having a go at Kate Forbes? She's being honest, and it's only because of her Presbyterian values that she's being attacked." Humza's not been attacked. Guys, that's not it at all. Humza was asked, "Did you vote for the same-sex marriage?" He said, "Yes, I did." Next question. Whereas Kate Forbes got into a theological debate. I mean, That's what happens.
Yeah. No, I mean, I watched Humza the other day on the TV, and actually someone else had described him as being charming but incompetent, and that's the feeling I got. You might talk to him and go, "Oh, that's okay, fine, okay, well, you've got a plan, but now go away and do it." No, that's not going to happen. That's the thing, and they come back and charm you and so on. And I think I think nationalism is a bit like that. It attracts people like that, to be honest. And politics, of course, attracts people like that anyway, right? Nationalism particularly so, because you can usually hide behind, all right, well, actually, I'm going for independence, these other things, I'll just take a wee bit longer, but like that. So I do think he's actually quite a good, he's a reasonable speaker in the interview, I thought.
At the moment, he's the health minister. Mm-hmm. So how well is he doing with that role?
Well, that's the thing, though. That's the problem.
Another role that completely failed at.
Yes. Absolutely right. Well, look, we just have every month we hear record missed targets for A&E or for waiting times to be seen. This is under his watch, and they can moan all they like about how their hands are tied by the UK government. Health has been devolved since 1990, whatever it is, 99.
That's true. That's a very good point.
So he has. I mean, as somebody unkindly said about David Frost, Humza is a man who rose without trace. He literally has done nothing of any worth to get another job. And the story is that he is from a family who are quite wealthy, who helped to bankroll the party, and that would explain why he gets all these jobs. That's the story. No idea if it's true, and that's what I've been told.
Yeah, but I think the thing comes down to, at a certain point, if you're a Scottish independentista and you're like, okay, we're going forward, and you say, is Humza Yousaf going to deliver independence in any possible time frame?
Never.
And
not
you might have said Salmon to the chance and actually did well in getting his chance, and Sturgeon blew her chance, but Humza has no chance.
Yep, none at all.
Right, and I didn't even write that down beforehand. So I think that's quite good. Now, are there any other candidates worth thinking about, or do you think anyone else will join the race?
Well, there was talk that a fourth person would come into the race, and then Social Security and Local Government Minister Ben McPherson. No, me neither. He announced today he wouldn't be standing up. Literally never heard his name. It looked like he considered it and decided against it. But the really interesting one, well, Jenny Gilruth was interesting, but she came straight out saying, okay, I back Humza. The other interesting one was Mary McCallan, who's always been my tip to get the job to replace Sturgeon. Had it been maybe 4 more years, I think she would have been, because she appeared today. She's the Environment Minister, baby-faced, very, very young looking. And she appeared today, and again endorsing Humza with her new look. Grown-up hairdo, tweed jacket. So she's looking, obviously trying to look a bit more, if you like, seasoned. She's going to be the person in time. She won't do it this time, but there was talk, because she pulled out early on because she said, thanks for asking. And I think most people were saying, sorry, who are you? So no, I don't see anybody else coming in. I really don't see anybody else coming in now.
Well, the thing is, ultimately, there is there's no path forward. There's no way to get a second referendum. If they actually improve their governance, which is unlikely under Humza or any of the other ones, because that's not the focus, then all it does is it proves that devolution works. And they don't want that.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're stuck between not just a rock and a hard place, but many rocks and many hard places. Yeah. We'll skip over.
Yeah, I think David's just going to talk about.
A couple of comments, very quickly, just 2 comments. A couple of people said, did Humza actually cast his vote? I think he may have missed the vote in the end, but I think the question may have been, would you have voted for same-sex?
Well, it's easy to say now.
Anyway, so I mean, I think he'd backed it up till then. We have to acknowledge, somebody's quite right, acknowledge the concerns published today from the Indian Council of Great Britain and from the Muslim Council of the UK, both of whom expressed their absolute horror at the idea of Humza Yousaf, who is of course a Muslim, getting the job as First Minister. It's only fair to raise to acknowledge the point that those rather influential groups of people have spoken out so vehemently against them. So
Okay.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll talk more about how that progresses next week. In the meantime, you can support this show if you like what we do. You can support it in various ways. You can. My number one is subscribe on YouTube, and you could even buy a T-shirt. We'll let you know when the new ones come out.
Still get the majority one, though. Look.
Oh yes. Let's see.
I'm trying.
Up here. Oh, there we go. You can get majority T-shirts. Show your support. We've got a winning team. That's why. Okay.
Here, here.
Oh, coming up, it's the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week.
Yay.
Right, so we're starting with David this week.
Okay, my Zoomer of the week this week is the permanently embarrassing and occasionally disgraceful Pete Wishart.
Right.
So on Monday of this week, Pete tweeted, it was unbelievable timing. He tweeted that he hoped Kate Forbes wouldn't be put off standing for First Minister over what he called all this rubbish about her religious beliefs. And Pete then clarified in a subsequent tweet that he was speaking as an agnostic. And he then tweeted, "Wow, this thread was certainly well timed. Really pleased Kate is standing," when Miss Forbes announced her intention to enter the leadership race almost immediately after his tweets. Exactly 1 hour later, a lady by the name of Lucy Glendinning tweeted, "I really like Kate Forbes, but I couldn't possibly vote for someone who doesn't believe in same-sex marriage or abortion." To which Peter, more faces than the town clock, Wishart replied, "No, neither could I." So that has to be the fastest pivot ever from delighted she's standing to I couldn't possibly vote for her that anyone in the SNP managed this week. 1 hour. Well done, Pete. Fantastic. So for being, as always, unintentionally entertaining and amusing, Pete Wishart, you are my first Zoomer of the week of the post-Sturgeon era. How good does that
yes, that was good. Very smooth, very slick. Okay, that was a good. Oh, he's always a good choice. Anyway, and he's got a very thin majority, hasn't he?
He's very much so. Yeah,
he's going to be in big trouble. Okay, Mary, you're up. Going to be up in a minute.
Okay. Okay, so my Zoomer of the week is someone who could really be Zoomer of the week just about every week, I think. So once again, it's Lorna Slater for not even understanding the basics of her own harebrained bottle return scheme. Now, so yeah.
I don't think she used the word brained in it. There's no brain whatsoever in it.
Okay, no. Yeah, I agree with that. So we've heard that basically businesses have no idea how this scheme is going to work. And I think there was some kind of committee meeting yesterday and Lorna was supposed to explain things. But when she was asked a question by whoever was presiding officer she was asked, so all these fines that you're going to collect for people who don't, adhere to the scheme the way they're supposed to, what happens to the money? And she just quickly turned around and said, "I don't know."
Right, okay.
And the committee guy, the presiding officer, he said, and then she tried to start talking. He said, wait a minute. He said, "Did you just say, I don't know?" And then somebody had to jump in. One of her spads had to jump in and save her. So it was just, but her manner was kind of as if, how would you expect me to know something, something like that?
Have you got, that's
but then, so I was going to say, it was no wonder that today, basically she had to come into Holyrood and then try and, defend her scheme or explain her scheme. And she was left completely on her own. And there was nobody around to support her.
Yeah, I saw that.
I think there was like one person. Have you got that, Mark?
Yeah, thank you, presiding officer. Well, it's been a torrid afternoon for this minister, buffeted from all sides as her rudderless, ambiguous, half-baked scheme has been dissected and dismantled.
Hold back,
and if a picture paints 1,000 words, just look at the empty seats and the empty rows surrounding her. Her SNP partners have abandoned her rather than be associated with this scheme. Indeed, only one MSP from her own party could sit through this afternoon to support her. But it's...
And as if that wasn't humiliating enough, she then drew gasps from the other members when she stood up to say...
Oh, okay, just give me a second. Get this, Lorna.
This is her defence.
Oh, that's okay, got it now.
Slater Minister to wind up on behalf of the Scottish Government. Up to 5 minutes, please, Minister.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I just point out that to Member Daniel Johnson, that just because he doesn't fully understand the details of the scheme doesn't mean that I don't, or that industry doesn't. The answers to many of these questions are well known and well understood. And before,
no, they're
not. Minister, please resume for a second.
Oh, what hopeless!
Quite a scene. Really. Quite a scene.
Oh my goodness.
Lorna does it again. She's basically just winging it on this one.
Just definitely, she's she doesn't know what's going on in the whole. Actually, I thought
nobody else
the
has
interesting
any
thing
clue
I
what's
saw
going
today
on.
was an SNP MP was against her. The one with the purple hair. Can't remember her name.
Oh yeah, Christine Green was, or the other one was it the woman Angela Constance. They both get purple hair.
No, the first one you mentioned, and
Christine Green.
yeah,
Christine
and she
Green.
was like, "Oh yeah, I've got small breweries in my area, and they're going to be all affected with this." And
Lorna does not care.
No,
she does not care.
Exactly. Yeah, alcohol is evil.
I'll let Tricky Mickey say it.
Right. Okay. Well, it's just shocking. Really, it's shocking. All right, moving along. We'll go for the next one.
Right, Mark.
Right. Well, it's no surprise who mine is. It has to be the one and only Nicola Sturgeon.
Yay!
And I haven't any notes here, so
well, how are you going to fit this into just a few minutes, Mark? Tell us.
Exactly.
Well, we've already spent a whole program on it, perhaps. But
Yep.
Let's just get to the basics. She destroyed the independence movement. Well, it's good for us, I suppose. But I mean, it's a bit of a Zoomerish thing to do if that's your whole aim in life. Since the thing you've done or you've wanted to do since you were 16 years old, and presumably before then, because she joined the party at that type of age. So your whole life's work builds up to an utter failure, a complete failure. Destroyed. She destroyed the independence movement. She destroyed a lot of wokery as well. Basically, she exposed it. Perhaps nobody can now say trans men or women. She did it. Nicola Sturgeon said that wasn't the case, and she destroyed she split the party, and she's left. She didn't nurture anyone into and say these are all the coalitions you have to keep together in the party. All this, she just split it, and now it's all split up into these different parts. So she did that. What else is she?
Basically, she's just run away.
Yeah, absolutely right.
It's not suiting her anymore, so she's just like, well, I'm not playing anymore, and she's running away. She hasn't set up any type of successor.
Yeah, not at all. And she's just, as you say, ran away. So I think we can look back on this period and say she created, of course, all this division in Scotland for years.
Yeah.
Unnecessary. She could have concentrated in governance. She could have just done her job without all this extra stuff that was going on. It was just far too much. And I think she'll be judged poorly in history. And I think hopefully that the Scottish people will realise the mistake of those years wasted, really, when we could have been improving many things in the country instead of trying to divide on the basis of constitutional aims.
There's so much more she could have done, but I think what Sturgeon might be worried about is her reign going to be followed on with her successor trying to his best to put her in jail, which is what she did to her predecessor. So
yes,
I wonder, given that, Salmon, that was over some dodgy personal behaviour of his, and it was dodgy, it was questionable. Was it criminal? It appeared no. But some of the stuff Sturgeon and Melville appear to have done, that's a little bit more worthy of possible real punitive action. So I think she could be in a bit of bother, guys, genuinely.
Interesting thought. We'll let you decide, though, today, David, on the Zoomer.
Right. Normally, I would give it to Lorna because, Lorna wins by definition every week. So I think this week, in honour of her departure and in honour of all the things that she's just left up in the air by running straight out of Dodge, it has to go to Nicola Sturgeon. So here's our parting gift to you. Outgoing
Great.
Your Zoomer of the week.
Yes, Zoomer of the
week winner is Nicola Sturgeon. Yeah.
Yes, a bit of a disaster there. Thanks for that, David. Now, we hope you enjoyed the show. Big thank you to all those who help us. That includes the donors who donate to the show. And I've got a wee thing here. We just should test this here, which is a wee thing you see next week, which is support the majority. You can use that as a wee QR code. So next time you're watching, you can have your phone ready for that. Or you can always rewind and scan that, or just go to our donation page, which is great. Big, huge thank you also to UK Union Voice and United Against Separation for their support.
So remember, guys, if you can, please go to our donate page and pledge a donation to The Majority. It will be a huge help to us.
Oh, there we go. Someone with comments, Mary?
Oh,
Where
yep.
am I? Well, I'm so busy reading the comments that I haven't said thank you, everyone, for your comments tonight. They've been great. They've kept me very busy. Thank you.
That's good. And yes, thank you for your comments. And please do keep in touch with us. And we'll leave you with the thought of the day. Thank you for that, Catherine. Mission accomplished indeed. But Sturgeon may be gone, but our job is not done. We, Majority, will not rest until Scotland is free from incompetent, divisive authoritarian nationalism. We thank you for your support as we work to remove it from our Scottish life.
Well said. Well said.
Good night from me. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and delighted to have helped get rid of you-know-who.
That's right. We won. See you next week.
Indeed. Cheers, guys.